Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel. In this MtoA series 1 to 5, I will talk about render optimization because I got frequent requests on how to clean up my renders, why is your machine rendering so fast, what are your render specs, and in today's video I will show you all the tricks, everything I use to speed up my IPR workflows, and in the end how to produce clean images and what settings to use and what settings not to use. But before we jump in, I first want to thank you guys for your support on my new app I have written for the iOS App Store, which is a material database. Currently, not too many shaders in there yet, but I am currently working on it to expand it. And here's a quick demo of the app, so have a look at that as well. And if you like it, please rate it on the App Store. That would help me to spread it out a bit more. Thank you guys for that. And also, if you want to help me out, support me, I'm on Patreon. And if you really want to show your appreciation of my tutorials, uh, please become a patron to support me. I also have some different reward schemes. If you want to have personal training with me, you can reward me by choosing a different patron membership. And I can help you privately using a video conference or some hangouts. So, what are we talking about today? I want to show you how to clean up your renders and first of all make your lighting sessions, your shading sessions fast and interactive. So, let's head over to Maya and I show you a little scene I have created, which should be kind of a production scene, as definitely not with the high-end models you generally face, but all in all, it's you have motion blur, you've got depth of field, you have indirect bounces, you've got direct light, you've got roughness, and I think this is a good scene to show you all the tricks and all the caveats in a render. Before I hit the render button, I want to show you my machine, which settings I have, and these are not too impressive actually. So I have a i7 4910 MQ CPU, 2.9 gigahertz, and I have, if I'm not wrong, 32 gigs of RAM. My graphics card is a GTX something. I'm not so sure, but that doesn't matter because Arnold does not even render with GPU, not yet. So heading back to Maya, this is now my default render settings. I just open it and I did not change anything at all, so you should see the same settings. And honestly, I don't think the default settings are good for quick iterations. They are okay if you, I don't know, if you want to have some basic renders, but it's not really helpful. It's not fast at all. And I just plugged in a sky shader, so you see some background images here, and I connected a AI volume scattering node, which is for a sampling of the volume rays, which I show you later on. So currently it is disabled using the diagnostics, so ignore atmospheres off, so it is as if it's not connected. Then first what I want to show you what my settings are when I start rendering. So the first thing I do is put everything to 0. So no indirect diffuse, no indirect glossy, no refractions, no SSS, and no volume indirects. And camera AA to 2. Also ray depth, these should be, the defaults are fine for this, one bounce here, one bounce there. And refraction is a bit low for default because most of the glasses you have, they should be at least I think at least 4 bounces to see something. So let's just save this into the tutorial scene. And next up, I go to textures, and this is something which they changed recently. They have this checkbox on default, which every time when you have a texture connected, it will regenerate the TX files. If you're on production, it's not really good because it will override published textures. So make sure this is off, and then use existing TX file if there are any. If not, if you don't have any TXs, um, this needs to be toggled the first time, so it generates a TX file, and then you can disable this. Or what you can do, you can use the texture manager to convert your texture maps into TXs, and then you don't need to first click this and untick this. So just keep this off because for my environment sphere I have a TX file and it will use that instead. So these are the things, and also for IPR sessions, 64 is nice for final renders for the bucket size if you have a big resolution, but if you want to have like a fast interactive IPR session, keep the bucket size small. So what I tend to do is just go to the lowest possible. It is locked to 16, so you can't go smaller than that. And then these are all the default settings, and I have one sky dome light which has also just one sample for now. So nothing is actually optimized at all. And let's just show you what the current render looks like. Alright, this is now what my current render looks like. You can see it's very noisy, but if I go to my perspective camera and I enable Windows toolbar and I enable 3D manipulation, you can actually see how very responsive it is, and it's actually super blazing fast now. And this is how I like to work, to create like basic setups, basic lighting directions, looking through lights, seeing what it more or less looks like, and then I slowly increase render settings. So as you can see, currently I don't have any indirect bounces, so I like to work in Rec 709. It's just a preference, nothing too special. Um, so if you're happy, like if you would do lighting, you would do some beauty lightings, you position lights, and I would always keep it in the lowest settings possible so you have fast iterations, which is important. Right, so this is where we are now, and the first thing what you want to do is you want to have some reference spheres, and these are the spheres I've added now. Currently they are not shaded, but I will quickly just create some basic metal for this guy. Roughness high, no diffuse, and then I would like to go to metallic, and then if I shift click and drag, you see that I'm framing now the roughness of this guy. That is the metal I'm going for. Also, I like GGX, which is the shading model, which has a softer ping. That is my metal. And now also what helps if you have resolution, test resolutions. So currently I'm on 75, and the higher your resolution, the longer it will take to render, obviously. So if you're on 200%, which is like a full HD, you can see it is not as interactive anymore, and you can see it is good, but it's already getting slow. And if you see, if I go down to, let's say, 50%, it's like real time. And that's also a big thing what I tend to do. I go and test resolutions, do all my stuff, and then slowly increase resolution so I get better quality. So this is test resolution. Let's go back to 75, disable that. Okay, so this is now where we are at. And then this is my metal, and I also like to have a plastic shader, which is, let's say, red plastic or rubber or something like that. And now also what I always do, I just render the selection, and then I get fast responses as well. You can see how nice this works out now. And these are all the techniques I'm using, and I'm just showing you how I work in production. And this is my workflow, which I think works pretty good and fast. And then this is now my basic plastic shader. So now let's say I'm happy with the lighting and everything, but now you want to go for better quality. So the first thing what you should do is enable indirect bounces, because it just looks better, it feels more integrated, all that kind of thing. So heading over to render globals, if you remember, I disabled indirect bounces, and I just store this image now so you can see what it actually does do, the indirect stuff, indirect diffuse and glossy rays. And let's say update full scene. And then immediately you should see way more light hitting the underside, like the indirect first bounce. Even here, this will get brighter there as well. It just takes a bit to translate because I have lots of trees in here. There we go. So now this is worth one indirect bounce. And you can already see what's happening. It's quite a big drastic change. You can see all the undersides now get lit up. The spheres get nicely lit up from the floor, and you see reflections in itself there as well. So that is what indirect does. So I've seen quite a few people who who think that increasing this makes the render look better, which is true for indirect stuff, but for direct noise, all you can do is increase the AA samples, or you can go into your lights. So I've seen lots of people, they have values like, let's say 5, think 5 is good because AA, the edges are clean, and then they increase the diffuse to something like 4 or 5 or 4 and glossy, and then wonder why their renders take forever, and there's actually, it does not get better, and then they see it's still noisy, and they increase the diffuse even more because they think it's the diffuse rays which are not clean. And you can directly see how long this already takes just to get some render setting, some clean renders. So it is important that if you don't have noise in the indirects, don't increase the indirects. That's a very important thing, and you can see it in the docs here as well. There is this nice, I will post these links in the description below, and you can see there is like a, if I find it again, like a nice dialogue how to clean up your images. So is the alpha noisy or is the edges jagged? Yes. Then increase AA samples. If not, then there is so when it is already clean, you go to the next one. And then is the indirect noisy? Then yes, increase indirect diffuses if that's noisy. So this is a really good graph to help you find clean renders. So the first thing which I mostly do is increase the samples for my HDR light. So the default is I think 1, and depending on how you go with the AA samples, it is either 2 or 3 samples because that is more than enough. So if you have, let's say you've got your final render settings is 5 AA, then you can go up to 3 samples for the dome light, but I tend just to keep it on 2 and then drive everything with the AA samples. Also important to know is if you render with motion blur, you need to have very high AA samples. And if you render with depth of field, you need to have even higher AA samples because they are only controlled by AA samples. So keeping that in mind, we will go up to, let's just see how, first I'll go up to full resolution or maybe even 200 just to see it a bit more closer up. So now let's see what we get in this area and check the alpha channel. Alpha is white because the sky dome light, the sky shader is contributing to that, which is a bit unfortunate, but I think I just hide it and then we should be fine. Now you can see, okay, I think the alpha is pretty good. It is clean. And we have now setting of 2. Mostly it's not enough. So let's just go up to 4 for the AA samples. And this should be, for now, the highest you should go if you don't render with motion blur. So let's get over to that again. And now let's check the noises, which we can see everywhere. So you can already see that we get noise on here. You see it's pretty noisy. I hope the quality of the upload is good enough to see all that stuff. So you can see there's noise very much here at the bottom. So how would you clean that up? So the thing is, you can either, first you need to check where is the noise coming from. Is it diffuse or is it indirect diffuse? So first to check that, you need to create your AOVs. And I just create the defaults for the AL surface shader, which are the same as the standard shader. So I just tend to create direct diffuse, direct spec. Let's take the second one as well. And then indirect, those 3. These are very important to find all the noise you see in your renders. Okay, so let's start the render up again and try to investigate where the noise is coming from. Alright, so there we go. Let's just render this portion again. And let's check the passes. Direct diffuse. How does that look? That is already pretty noisy. So it's either AA samples, because it's the direct, it's either AA samples or light samples. So let's first try to clean this up. So either you can increase the AA, as I just told you, because the diffuse should not matter at all because it's indirect. And you should get the same noise. You see there's no visual difference in any noise changes, but you increase for diffuse, so this doesn't even do anything for the direct diffuses. So bringing this back to 1, And I'm heading over to my main light now. I just have one skydome light. So these are the A samples for that. So let's say I increase those to 4. Oh, not to 1, 4, 4, to 4. And now we should see a cleaner image for the AA samples, for the noise in the direct. And you can see it is already cleaner. Render times go up a bit, but it is getting pretty good. I zoomed up now 150% in full HD quality. And this is now 4 AA and 4 light samples. So if I compare this, storing this image and go back to, let's say, 1, you can see what is going on here. You see the difference. This is 1 for the light, and this is 4 for the light. Big difference. So this is the first thing you should check if you have noise in your diffuse passes. And if you're happy with your AA samples, the only thing you can do is changing light samples. So if you have lots of area lights, it depends now, depending if how high you go for your AA samples, but this will increase render times a lot, and you will get lots of shadow rays for that. So I stay with 3 for now, because I'm pretty sure I will need to increase AA samples because I'm rendering with motion blur. So, and in the end I will need to maybe go down even to 2, because I will have, I think, 12 AA samples, and then the rest needs to be adjusted accordingly. So indirect diffuse, sorry. So now you can see that is also pretty noisy for the indirect passes. So the indirect noise is only cleaned up by this guy here. So if you have 4A samples, you can go higher with the diffuse noise. So now it's on 3, and now we should get definitely cleaner passes. And you can see it's cleaning up quite drastically already, just by increasing the diffuse samples. So storing this image and going back to 1, you should see that there's a big cleanup in noise. You see that? Big difference. So this is checking AUVs, checking if they are noisy, and if they are noisy, just control the according samples for that. So for this, let's just go with 3, and then let's check the indirect spec passes. Not sure where they are currently, on the car and maybe on the sphere here as well. Also, it is noisy, so if I reduce the noise, it's off. 1 is 1 sample, let's just store that. And I also like to use, sometimes I just disable progressive refinement, so then I get the final step directly. Right, so this is the final step for glossy 3 samples. I store this and I go back to glossy 1, and then again you can see the big difference. So always important, check your AOVs and then adjust your render settings accordingly. So this is 3, this is 1, and you can see a big change. So 433 is actually a good setting if you don't go higher again for the AA samples. So let's check the beauty, the overall render. So all the passes combined, and I will reduce my resolution to 50, and then let's see how the render looks like. Alright, as you can see, it is still noisy, and it's mostly in the direct diffuse as far as I can see, and that means increase AA samples or light samples. So I don't want to increase them now because I want to show you the next things to do. So currently we have refraction as well, which is on 0. So you wonder why is it refracting when refraction is on 0? The thing is, this can be on 0 if you have no roughness in your refractions in the shader. So if I click and go into the shader, as soon as you bring in roughness, this will render black because there's no roughness rays. So I show you, I'm just storing the image, and I am going to progressive again, and now I bring in some roughness, and all of a sudden there is no refraction anymore. So keep that in mind. If you have roughness, you need to have values in here. If you don't have roughness, then you can keep it on 0. And for glasses, most of the time they are super clean, no roughness for that, so you can keep this on 0. And then if you've got subsurface scattering shaders, this is the only way to control the cleanliness of SSS passes. So I think there's an SSS example in here as well, if I'm not mistaken. Let's just check. Indirect diffuse, indirect spec, refraction, SSS noise. So the only thing you can do, if this is a USS shader, you can only increase SSS samples for that. And check the AUV as it states here. Check your SSS AUV to confirm the noise levels. So yeah, sometimes the UI is just not responsive, and you just need to move the UI a bit, scale the UI, and then it jumps into the render. Okay, and these guys, ray depth, this is bounces. So if you have an interior scene and you wonder why it is so dark and you have diffuse ray depth on 1, it is because the ray hits the surface once and then dies. So the higher you increase this value, the more bounces there are. So a value of 2 or 3, the initial ray will hit the first surface, then it will bounce onto the next, and then die. And this really brightens up your scene, but also introduces more rays, which need cleanup, which increases render times. So this is mostly important for um, indirect interior renders, but also if you have like very dark shadows like this, you can try to increasing the bounces, and let's just see what that looks like. So I'm storing the one with 1 bounce, and I go up to 3, and then you could see that it's getting a bit brighter. It's hardly visible. Well, I can see it here a bit. It's like a tiny gets a tiny bit greener and brighter, but nothing too crazy. But it is, if you have, for instance, you're in an elevator and you have a mirror, and you can see, if you look into the mirror, you can see it is reflecting yourself on almost infinite times, and this is a good example of reflection depth. So this would control, I think the glossy one is for that. So if you have 2 mirrors opposite each other and you want to see this effect of infinity, you need to increase your glossy rays quite a bit, because the ray will bounce back and forth all the time. So that is that. So for most cases, this is enough. For production renders on a show, I tend to do it, set these both to 2, because it just gives a bit nicer reflections if you have glossy stuff. Like if it will bounce 1, 2, 3, then you get a bit nicer shiny shaders. But for the technique I'm showing you, this should be more than enough. And as I told you, refraction, if I think this goes below 4, you don't see any refraction anymore. So I think 4 is the minimum, which you should always use. And now let's do a few things. So the first thing I want to show you is a different kind of noise, which is fireflies. And fireflies are not good. If you have fireflies, you have some issue with too high values in your scenes. And you can compensate for that. So at first I want to show you how you get fireflies at first. So I'm just saving and I'm just adjusting the scene a bit. And the first thing I want to do is I want to create a night scene where you have lights turn on. So for that, I'll just hide the trees for now. So just for faster iterations. And I enable the lights and I hide my environment lights. So there's no environment lighting, only those 4 area lights from which are the headlights of the car. So it might happen if you've got street lights or you just have a surface very close to a bright light surface.